Today we're going to kind of wrap everything up that we've learned so far in Chapter 4 by finding the area of composite shapes on a grid. Okay, remember that when we are solving shapes that are on a grid, each square is equal to 1 unit. Okay, and our answer is always going to be in units squared because each square is considered like 1 unit. Okay, so to find the area of composite shapes, remember we break it into shapes we already know how to find the area of, like we did yesterday. So for example, that would be like triangles, rectangles, and parallelograms. I write too big, sorry. Okay, then we are going to count for the base and the height, counting those squares. Remember when we count for the base and the height, we count the line. Because sometimes in like those parallelograms or in those triangles, like they don't cover the full square, but we don't care about that. We just count the line for how long the base is and we count the line for how tall the height is. Okay, and then we solve it as normal. We write the formula, substitute in the numbers, solve and write the answer with a label. And remember that label will be units squared. You can simplify that to UN squared. Okay, so let's get into some examples. At any point, you can pause the video to work ahead. We might choose to break them up differently. However, we should always end up at the same answer. If we end up at different answers, I would maybe try to break it up the way I do so that you can see where your mistake is. Okay, so let's start with this triangle, rectangle, rectangle. I should use colors, sorry. Triangle will be purple. So my triangle, base times height divided by 2. My base, I'm going to count how long this line is. Even though this this square right here isn't fully covered with the triangle, I'm just counting how many squares long is my base, is that line. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Times my height of that triangle is going to go straight up to the top, 1, 2. And then divide that by 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Divided by 2 would get us 8. Next, I'm going to do my middle rectangle in green. That's going to be base times height. My base, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or we could have known that since the top was 8, the bottom is going to be 8, so we wouldn't have had to recount that. And then my height of just that rectangle is going from here to here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 8 times 4, 32. Last but not least, I have my rectangle down at the bottom, which I'm going to do in blue. Rectangle, so it's base times height. We have 1, 2, 3 times 1, 2. Last step, we would go ahead and add those all up. If you want to pause the video to give yourself time to stack those and add them up, you may choose to add them all up at once or do 2 at a time. We should get 46 units squared. Okay. If you're feeling confident, go ahead, pause that video. You do not need to watch me do this. If you want to watch, you can. I'm going to break it up right here into a rectangle and a triangle. I'm going to start off with shape number 1 in blue. That's my rectangle, base times height. I count for that line of that base. Go ahead and do that. Should get 5. Times my height to that rectangle, I count for that height. Go ahead and do that. I got 8, so I do 5 times 8, which is 40. Now I can do my triangle, base times height divided by 2. If I want to turn my paper so that the base is at the bottom, I can. And then my height will be going straight up. So for my base, I would count for that. Again, I could count those squares, or I could look across to the other side to know that this is going to be 8. My height, I'm going to erase this too so you can watch me do this. You do not have to erase yours. I'm going from the bottom straight up to the top. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, we are just counting that line that goes from the bottom to the top. So even though this last square is not completely filled by that triangle, that does not matter. We are just counting how long that line is. You could have counted it out here as long as we stop where that triangle stops. Okay, 8 times 4 divided by 2 would give me 32 divided by 2. If we don't know what 32 divided by 2 is, we can always pull it to the side, do some long division. 2 can go into 3 once. Subtract 2. 2 can go into 12 6 times. It would be 16. Last step, I just have to add those two together. So 40 plus 16 would give me 56 units squared. You always want to circle your final answer. That way I know out of all this work what your final answer is. Okay. If you want to watch me break this next one up, you can, but otherwise I want you to pause this video and try this on your own. Remember, when you break up a shape, you always want to break it up into as few of shapes as possible. That way it's less work. So for this one, for example, I would break it up here and here into 2 triangles and a rectangle. Okay, so now if you followed along for this, go ahead, pause the video and try to do these on your own, and then you may resume the video to check your answer. I'm going to start with my rectangle first, get the easy one out of the way. Count for that base, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4. Count for that height, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 4 is 24. Now I'm going to do my, I'm going to label it up at the top. Triangle over here, which would be base times height divided by 2. My base, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My height, 1, 2, 3. You could have done that inside or outside. Either way, we should still get 3. 3 times 6 is 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now I'm not done. I did not add those up quite yet because I still have this other triangle to the right side, which would be a base times height divided by 2. Base, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did not have to count that. If I would have noticed this was 6, as well as for the rectangle it was 6. I did not have to recount that. But if I want to double check, you may. Height, 1, 2, 3. At this point, I'm going to notice that this one is going to be the same as this one. So I do not have to show all that work if I don't want to. I can just say that my answer will be 9. Now I'm going to add up 24, 9, and 9. I'm going to group my 2 9s together because I know those make 18. And then I can stack 24 and 18. 8 plus 4 is 12. Final answer would be 42 units squared. All right. Again, go ahead, pause the video, try this next one on your own, resume the video to check. There's so many different ways you could break this up. You could break it up here and here. You could break it up here, here. You could break it up going across. This is the way I'm going to do it, just so I have a 1, 2, 3. But either way, we're going to end up with the same answer. Okay, so go ahead to the answer if you broke it up differently than me to see if you got it correct. If not, go back through the video and watch how I did it. Base of rectangle number 1, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Our height is 1, 2. That'd be 18. Shape number 2. I've got my base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My height. 1, 2, 3. That would give me a 15. Shape number 3. I'm just going to squeeze it in down here. Base times height. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Last step, I would add those up. So I'm going to stack 18 and 15 first. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 33, plus 9, 12, carry the 1, 42 again. I must have liked that number today. So this final answer would be 42 units squared. If you have to write the summary for Avid, you can fit this in somewhere else. Final answer would be 42 units squared. All right, so this is very similar to finding the area of composite shapes, except that we just have to count for that base and count for that height. Remember that every square is equal to 1 unit, and that even if it's like a triangle, we are counting those lines of the base and the line of the height. So we're just counting how many squares that line is long.